right, everyone, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today. My name is Lucio. I will be your host on this webinar titled Trends in Test Automation. Again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Today with us, we have Rex Jones and Paul Grisafi and also Mike Verinder. I will be doing a quick intro for all of you, but in the meantime, if you can say hello to the audience. Hey, everyone.
Hey, guys.
Very happy to have you here.
Hey,
so we have Rex. Rex, I learned that you are a globally acclaimed trainer and author of programming and automating software, as well as you have a background in programming test strategy, test plans, and test design. And you're fueled by your passion of understanding all aspects of software development. And one thing that I found very interesting about you is that you consider yourself a forever student, determined to build on your academic foundations of computer science and computer information systems. And it looks like you have a YouTube channel with quite the pool, and also a cool blog for those of you who want to learn more about you. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Rex?
Yes, you're right. I consider myself a forever student because technology is always evolving. So I like to learn and also like to share knowledge. So that's my passion for testing, whether it's with automation or without automation, as long as the requirements are met and we satisfy the company. So yes, I love learning and like sharing.
That is fantastic. We're very happy to have you here. We're about to have a wonderful conversation on the topic of AI and trends in test automation. So welcome. And now we also have Paul Grisafi. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Paul.
Exactly right.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear. So Paul, for the audience, is an accomplished keynote speaker, international conference speaker, and writer. He also has spoken at very numerous local and national conferences and meetings in the QA industry. He has been featured in the Joe Colantonio podcast and also describes himself as a, quote, asker of uncomfortable testing questions, unquote. And I pulled that from your Twitter handle. Paul, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So a lot of times I'm in consulting now, but even before I was in consulting, I would be brought in to build automation. We want to automate stuff. All right, cool. Why? Why do you want to automate? What business value is it going to bring to you? And a lot of times people will know those answers if they think about them a little bit, but they mostly haven't thought about it. So part of my job is to ask those questions so that when we get to the end of an automation engagement where we're building the initial thing or whatever it is, the client, the company, whoever can go, yes, that provided value. And without asking those uncomfortable questions, you don't always get the maximum value that you possibly could.
Wonderful. I think that is a very important approach. I'm happy to learn more about it. So, Paul, it also looks like you can recite lyrics from 80s metal, from more than 80 metal songs.
If I could get some of those metal lyrics out of my head, I could probably be a lot more effective at my job, but such is the curse of my teenage years. So yes, I know a lot of lyrics from a lot of 80s songs.
Nice. Wonderful. Okay, for the audience, if you want to learn more about Paul's vast experience in the QA industry, you can do so at reading on his blog in responsibleautomation.wordpress.com. And last but not least, we have Mike Verinder, the Chief Community Advocate here at Katalon. Mike has over 2 decades of experience in the software quality assurance industry. And also, Mike, tell us about the Selenium group that you run on LinkedIn. It has over, 200,000 users?
We'll probably hit 200,000 today, actually.
Oh, wow.
So we're right at 199. So yeah, it's a group I've probably had it for 15 years now. So it's a great group, man. Great community. Just like the Katalon community is a great community, the Selenium user group is a great community as well. Just a place for people to gather and talk about shared interest. So anyway.
Fantastic. That's
Hey,
wonderful.
Paul, what's your favorite metal band?
Ozzy.
I just had to ask, man. I mean,
oh yeah.
Can't go wrong with that. All right,
No,
welcome,
absolutely
welcome,
not.
everybody. Welcome, the three of you, also to our fantastic audience. I want to run through a couple of housekeeping items before we start. We will have a Q&A session. We are going to dedicate about 45 minutes to our conversation today, if you're still in your planning phase of the Monday. So you will invest about 45 minutes with us today. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end. But also I want to encourage you to ask any questions that you may have throughout the webinar. Use the Q&A button that you will see on your Zoom interface down below. You can also put it on the chat window if you can, but I will be actively monitoring more the Q&A. Also, don't wait until the end to ask any of those questions. In addition to that, this webinar will be recorded. So if at any point in time you need to jump off, you can always come back and catch up where you left off. And today we're going to talk about the test automation trends and also the influence of AI in test automation, as well as the trends in open source tools. And most importantly, what is the impact of AI in the role of the QA tester or the tester's role? So this is how we're going to do today's dynamic. So I am going to go ahead and launch a poll, and the first poll is going to be, let me see if I can get to this really quick. We're going to drive the conversation with the first question, which is going to be, the poll should be on live right now. We're gonna let it run while you guys start having the conversation around this topic. But the question is, are you using AI in your current IT shop? So, Mike, why don't you elaborate more on how do we want to, what do we see here?
So I'm not unmuted. I just want to make sure I was unmuted. So this is just referring to do you have any AI tooling in your shop currently? It doesn't have to be ChatGPT. It can be something else that you use. But we're just trying to get a good idea on what AI is like in the marketplace currently, right? And who uses it. So
excellent. So as we wait for the answers, and I'm gonna let these run for a couple of minutes. Paul or Rex, feel free to jump in. How do you see that what is your, obviously you have been in the industry for a long time. How do you see AI right now impacting IT teams? Do you think there is going to be what do you think the trend is going to be? A lot of people is using it. Is it still a somewhat of a new a concept that most of us are probably still trying to experiment with before putting fully into production? What can you tell us, or what can you tell the audience about what this trend would be?
I can see a big pendulum swing, not necessarily a healthy one, but much like when everything comes out new, every software vendor, tool provider, software package deliverer is going to try and rush and bake in some sort of AI-ness to their product. Otherwise, they will appear to be behind the times. Whether it's really AI, whether it's practical, whether it's useful, that's going to be completely case dependent on both the software application and the particular set of users for that software application. The other thing I see is there's going to be a typical knee-jerk reaction, right? Back when there was new automation, it's okay, we're going to automate all the testers out of a job. That didn't happen. What's going to happen here is, I think, senior leadership is going to go, cool, we have all this AI, it can write our tests, it can write our automation, it can write our code. A lot of people are going to be displaced from their jobs, or their jobs are going to change radically. A lot of the expectations will not be met, either because they were impractical in the first place, or we're just not there yet. We're decades away from what people have in their mind about what these tools and capabilities can do. So the pendulum's going to swing back, and we're going to have more human beings back into some of these activities. But in the meantime, there's going to be this trail of dead careers and dead jobs that I'm concerned we're going to see.
Yes, and I see AI as a new concept, and I played around with ChatGPT, and I've seen ChatGPT create design patterns like page object model with Page Factory, but I think it's right now just a new concept that people are still playing around with. And for us currently, my shop is not using AI, but I do see people starting to use it and just see what it's about.
I can tell you guys, like, before I worked for a test product company, obviously I work for a test product company now, but before I worked in a test product company, you know, I would always see things after they hit market, right? And it was always me searching out, trying to find, you know, what is this guy doing? What is that guy doing? And trying to incorporate it in to make sure that I could impact, you know. But now, you know, I'm a little further, and I see more of the, from a product side, you know, I see the products coming a lot more since I'm on the product side now. And you know, I do see products coming out, a lot of products coming out ever since probably December. You know, a big surge began, and not, you know, not just one company, but a number of companies. The interesting thing will be the regulatory around it, and you know, how have these product companies implemented with that regulatory in mind, which is not even created yet, right? And so if you look at the regulatory around a lot of the AI that's coming out, and everybody's rushing to create regulations because everybody wants to be first, because everybody wants to be standard, right? So you see the EU just passed legislation, or I think Parliament just passed a regulatory bill. The White House has a Bill of Rights that it kind of agreed on. If you look at the states, I think 26 of our 50 states have regulatory measures around AI. So, you know, it's not that AI is not going to come out. It is. It's going to come out en masse. But it's interesting how the products are going to be built with that regulation in mind. So.
Yeah, I agree. Regulation is going to start playing impacts along the way here. And I'm not an anti-AI, right? It's got place, it's got value. But like this person, Russ Thomas, wrote in the chat here, yes, basically we're in a trust but verify situation, right? Let's ask the AIs to do things for us, and then we have to go and vet them. And if we're going to get into a position way too early on that we're not doing the verification, which is what I think some people are looking at, right, is we just say, ChatGPT, write this thing for me, and then we copy and paste it into a report or to the web or whatever, right, our homework paper. And that's the irresponsibility, because I'm very, very anti-irresponsibility.
Yeah, I think it's another tool in the box, right?
Agreed.
And you use it where it makes sense, and where it doesn't, you won't.
Rex, it looks like you had something to add.
Yes, I was thinking about when he mentioned ChatGPT. When I saw it create code, I saw some loopholes. That's why I do not see companies implementing all the way, but I do see people trying to see what it can do. But like most things, it has pros and cons. I see AI helping some problems. I mean, helping out, easing problems. And also I see it causing problems depending on how a person use it. So for now, I don't see myself implementing in my job, but I may play around with it some more to see what it's capable of doing.
So I want to share the results of the poll. Right now, we have 16% of participants said that yes, they are using AI in their current IT activities in their shop. 64% said no. And also 20% said we're using it in some places, so just partially, which is interesting. What do you think, and this is a question for the three of you, what do you think it will take for a poll like this months down the road, or maybe years, to completely flip to when people are going to say, yeah, 60 to 70% of the attendees are going to say, yes, we are using AI versus just a few saying, no, we're not ready for that yet?
I guess I'll go first. So, well, first, I think you're going to see more product companies come out with more AI tools, right? And I think you'll see that done at a value priced positioning, right? So I think that's one aspect. I think safety is another aspect, right? So they have to feel safe with the tools that they're using, and that they know that they're actually going to help. Quite frankly, privacy is an issue. If you look at, there's probably 10 or 12 big companies that have banned ChatGPT, for example, right? There's a good 30 something countries that aren't able to use ChatGPT at all. But a lot of those Italy banned ChatGPT, for example, right? And a lot of those are privacy concerns. So, are you going to have to start to incorporate things in a private cloud type environment? How do you deal with those privacy concerns? I think those are some big barriers, I guess.
One of the things that you mentioned Italy. I believe I came across a couple of weeks ago with an article that mentioned that the government of Italy was either evaluating or putting in place some sort of remuneration, or it was almost like it sounded like they wanted to create a fund for those who are losing jobs or potentially would lose jobs to AI. Paul, you mentioned something earlier a few minutes ago about, there are going to be jobs that may be jeopardized by this. Do you think in the future the tester of the role will be the AI? It will impact the roles, the tester's role positively, or do you think this is going to be is going to have a negative impact on them?
Again, I think this goes back to responsibility, where in some cases they will be negatively impacted, in other cases positively impacted, partially based on what their job is today, how capable they are of, and willing, of course, to learn an additional new novel technology, how responsible their organizations are with their decision making, and understanding that at least in the near to mid-term, this is not a human replacement unless the human is doing something that is completely mechanizable. And if it's mechanizable, then they're probably already doing it with automation anyway. But in general, most humans, whether they realize it or not, bring additional things to the table, right? And they're not just following a script, check boxes, press this, do that. They notice things, right? Maybe they ask a question about, should it do that? Those are intangibles that, to my knowledge, most, if not all of the AI systems today can't do that. They can't feel, right? They can't think per se, how a human thinks and feels. They can't really follow a chain of weirdnesses along the way. They can point them out, but they can't really make value decisions in a responsible way along the way. Never mind the potential bias in the training data, right? That they have. But then you talked about, is it going to change positively or negatively? I think the skill sets are going to change drastically. I think there's going to be more math, more statistics, understanding about heuristics and confidence intervals, and understanding, hey, we trained it with this. We got this information out when we put this other set of data in. Does that fall in the heuristic? Yes or no? Should it have, and why? Or should it not have, and why not? There are going to be a lot more evaluation type activities for testers, and I think for software development in general.
Absolutely. Rex, you then again, going back to picking on your line, you described yourself as a forever student, and it looks like this is something that you always like to do. You want to learn. How do you think AI is going to impact the software development practice? Is it going to make it easier? Do you think that onboarding people is something that now AI is making easier for people to jump into software development and say, okay, I can do this, rather than having to deal with complexities like before?
Yeah, I think it's making it easier, But for me to implement it at my company, it takes more research. Do I trust it? And also, like Mike mentioned, privacy. And also in the chat, Kyoki mentioned security and responsible in development environments. So for a company to implement it, I think it takes more research. But for now, I'm going to keep playing around with it, using it, because I think it's going to be here in the future. And since I like learning, I'm going to keep learning more about it.
There is an interesting saying that a friend of mine here at Katalon shared once with me. He said, "I don't think we need to be worried about AI, and you need to be worried about who knows how to use AI correctly." So that is an interesting point of view. And also, I want to pair that with a question that came from an anonymous attendee here on the Q&A that says, "How are AI and machine learning applications itself tested?" This almost goes with the question like, who's auditing the auditor? Like, so. What do you guys think about that?
I don't have any information on that because I don't, in my close circle, I don't know of anyone who is testing AI or ML applications right now. They might be, I'm just not aware of it. And it's not anything that my current client is doing. In fact, my current client, to go back to a couple of the points from earlier, they have shut off access to ChatGPT as it's blocked. Actually, they shut off most everything. Everything has to be whitelisted to go out, but explicitly that is denied right now. And bringing in any sort of software that has an AI component to it has to go through additional security and network evaluation and scrutiny before it can be approved, even for a proof of concept, because they are very concerned about privacy and data and things like that.
So that is an important point, I want to say back in 2006 or 5, I remember I came across an article when Google was becoming the research. We used to have Alta Vista, we had Yahoo, we have a bunch of other things. And then Google started kind of, falling on the race. I remember I read an article that, and don't quote me on this, but it said, "Is Google making us stupid?" And the word stupid was spelled with 2 O's, like the Google logo. I do wonder, and I would like to know, what are your thoughts into, if you're, then again, going back to the poll question, if you're using a current AI in your current IT shop, is AI going to make these shops more effective, or is it going to make people lazier in terms of like, oh, I can go ahead and use a GPT model or LLM to create my code for my test cases or whatever it is that I'm doing? Or do you think it's going to expand on the knowledge of those who already have a fundamental base and they want to, okay, now I can go ahead and automate mundane things so I can focus on learning more?
Well, does a dishwasher make us lazy? Or a clothes dryer make us lazy, right? Or an electric can opener? Some might say yes. There are skills that perhaps we have lost along the way. Are those important skills today? I don't know. In some cases, they might be. In some cases, they might not be. Similar with the software that we have, similar with Google, right? I can tell you my mom's phone number, my dad's phone number, my grandma's phone number, all these from when I was growing up. I cannot tell you my work phone number right now. I can't. Any phone numbers that have come around in probably the last 20 or so years, if I didn't have to dial them manually many times, I don't have them anymore. I don't. And it happened somewhere between the last 20 and 30 years, because I can remember my old work phone number from my first job out of college in 93. I can't tell you what any of my last work phone numbers were. But is it important to have that information when you can have it at your fingertips?
Right.
I don't know. Some people will say yes. Some people will say no. Have our memories gotten worse? Maybe. I think mine has, but I'm also a lot older than I was in 1993. So I think that's a very dependent question, where are we getting stupider on things that still matter versus are we getting stupider on things that we had to do because we didn't have another way to do them more effectively or more efficiently?
Yeah, I can tell you from a product perspective, right? So, I mean, there's functionality, AI functionality where, you can highlight a piece of code and it'll tell you exactly, that AI will tell you exactly what that piece of code does, right? So if you think of a line of code that has a bunch of variables in it, right? or loops or whatever, and you highlight that code, and that code can tell someone in real English what that is up there, right? And I could see that helping the tester maybe, or even a developer that may not have to follow that variable 30 lines of code up, right? So I could see it helping in some of those aspects, but that's a tool in the box of how it can help. But testing AI is a completely different box, right? Because now your context, you're testing how do I jump in and out of this box, right? And where are the boundaries of this box, right? And you're trying to figure out that whole scope, and that's a different challenge, actually testing the ML of the AI rather than using it, right? Using it's a pretty straightforward to some extent.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Rex, I see some nods from you. What do you have?
Yes, I'm not sure if it will make a person lazy. It can, but I do believe, like Paul mentioned earlier, that it would change the skill set of some people. And also, like Russ mentioned, the focus, I believe, would change with a lot of people from coding to code review, because they would review the code that ChatGPT or AI has spit out. So it would be a lot of code review. And by changing the skill set from coding to code review, for some people may forget a lot of the concepts, the fundamentals that came with automating applications or programming. So I believe the skill set will change.
I agree with that. I think you probably spend more time on strategy, right? And planning your execution and where you want to do something and how you're going to do it. Being able to incorporate different types of testing and more testing, right?
Yes.
And just being able to plan that out because you have a little bit more information to be able to do that.
Excellent. All right, so let's go ahead and launch the second question that we have here prepared for the conversation, and it reads, I hope it's showing right now, but let me go ahead and change it here. Does your shop currently use an open source tool? So Mike, I'm gonna go ahead and let you elaborate on this. What is the relation between that we're seeing with open source tools and also the AI influence that we're seeing lately?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, right? So I don't think that it's interesting to see, where the market will go from an open source tool perspective, right? Will you see new open source tools develop around AI products, right? Or become AI products? Will you see smaller integration with open source tooling, just AI specific startup type things or open source tools type things? I don't know. I just was just kind of wondering where the market sits, right? And it's an interesting time from an open source tool perspective. I think actually open source tools are it's a good time to do it because kind of the financial constraints of the market right now. There's not a whole lot of money in the market, right? And so I think it's a good time to actually have more open source tools, right? Because of that. So it's interesting to see if there's any that have massively started up or how they're trending or what they're doing.
Yeah, so you mentioned the financial constraints there. There's a guy named Jim Hazen that I'm friends with, and he likes to quote Mr. Goodrich, right? Pay me now, pay me later. And the analogy doesn't quite hold exactly, but the phrase does. If you go with something vendor supplied, a third-party tool that you're paying for, yes, you're putting some money out of pocket. But if you go with open source, you're putting little to no money out of pocket, but generally there's additional effort required by the team or the organization to get that all aligned and ready to go over what a vendor supplied tool might provide for you. So I think people and organizations aren't doing enough math around that. They're not doing enough financial analysis to decide, okay, yes, for tool X, it's going to cost me $30,000 a year out of the box and I get these features. Hey, but open source X. I don't want to name a particular one, right? Because people get their backs up over that. But open source X is free. I can download it. It's on my computer. I can start using it immediately, no dollars. But what is it integrated with? Are there other things you need to do the integrations for yourself? Do you have to add some frameworks on top of it where perhaps you would not have to do that with the vendor supplied tool? And look at your core competency. If you're going to start building an automation framework and an automation infrastructure based on code that you're developing in-house, you're creating an additional core competency for yourself that there's an opportunity cost there. You're either going to have to add staff to do that work, or you're going to have your current staff do that work. And therefore, there's an opportunity cost for other activities you could have put into your product, either to gain additional revenue or reduce additional costs there. So I just don't think companies are doing enough math for a total cost of ownership kind of operation for automation and open source in general.
Yes, I think a lot of companies lean towards open source because they get an immediate impact. But the part with that some people don't think about is creating their own framework and maintaining their framework. And a lot of companies will have someone who's a subject matter expert to teach other people who don't have much knowledge. But it does come with the price because you have a person who's creating a framework, maintaining a framework, and also have additional responsibility of training people. Now, what my company does and a lot of other companies do, they have an open source tool and they integrate it with the paid tool like Gyro or some other kind of management tool. What's missing a lot of times and what I've seen on different projects is a proof of concept. They don't do the upfront work to see if it's best to go open source or with the paid tool. So that's my my experience with open source.
Yeah, I used to go to a lot of shops and they would always say, I almost said it. I want Selenium because it's free, right? And I would have to again, I've been in Selenium for a long time, and I would say, it's a great tool, but you have to really understand what your total costs are, right? Your at that time, at least, your resource costs were higher. And it's going to cost you a lot more to build up, to make this framework and to maintain this framework, So, and they would never get that, right? So that would always be the argument in the shop, and I would come out with the math and I would show it to them on paper and they would still add, still free.
Yes, and I've seen people underestimate what it takes to have a successful automation project. People have contacted me, asking me about automation, and they have mentioned that their manager or leader wanted them to implement automation like yesterday. So they're in a rush to come up with some kind of framework for automation, but they don't have the proper foundation of programming and also the concepts of automation. And sometimes those projects fail because they don't have the right people in place to have an automation project.
Paul, I saw you nodding when Rex struck that chord of not knowing exactly what it takes. So what is your opinion on that, especially when we're talking about like Rex said, hey, some people get all excited and yeah, let's go ahead and do automation right away, and there is all these tools. It seems to be like there is a wave of excitement there, and eventually they hit the wall where they go like, oh, hang on a sec, there is more to this magic than what meets the eye. What's your opinion on that?
Absolutely. No, Rex hit the nail on the head. There's not a whole lot to add to that. I mean, I can give examples and give more details and use more words, but Rex hit the nail on the head. If your expectations are wrong up front, your endeavor is going to fail regardless, because even if it worked and provided value, but your expectations were out of whack, then you're going to consider it a failure, and it's going to be automation doesn't work here. That tool's terrible. I want to switch to this other tool. I'm hearing a lot of people switching from one tool to another tool, both open source, because the first tool doesn't work. Well, no, the first tool works. Your expectations are wrong. You're going to have the same problem with this other tool, or different problems with this other tool, because I know that tool too. None of them are perfect. They're all software. And the idea of write it and you're done doesn't work. It's software the same way your product is. We were asked one time, hey, when are we going to stop the automation and the updates to the website? And the answer back was, well, when our number one competitor stops updating their website, we'll stop updating ours, right? So it's a constant churn of new features, therefore parity in your automation, therefore constant churn in your automation.
We lost your audio, Paul. My apologies. Well, Paul, that wasn't a cliffhanger right there. So let's that's definitely that was a marketing move that we applied to the webinar. We just wanted Paul to get everybody tense on what is it that he was saying. So while he fixes his mic, I want to go ahead and end the poll here and share the results of, does your shop currently uses an open source tool? And we have 55% of the respondents saying yes, 24% saying no, and also a very close 21% saying we use a mix of licensed tools. And this goes close to what Rex was saying a few minutes ago of, like, you know, you can use an open source tool integrated with other tools that are paid. And I think that is a very interesting point towards the approach of automation. And I think we have some documents around that, where we talk about what is the strategy that you should apply when implementing automation. And one of the things that I think we touch on that is not everything is I'm going to make up a word here, not everything is automatable, right? So that's one of those things that I think that I would encourage people to research about. You know, what can you automate, what can you not, or what you shouldn't automate. And then definitely dive a lot into the cost of build versus buy, because, you know, to you guys' point, it sounds like, you know, there is a lot of tools out there that sound like, you know, they're free, they're open, they're quote unquote easy to use, but then at the end, then it takes a lot of development, a lot of investment. So in the long run, especially in times like these, it definitely would make sense to save every penny you have, and research like that definitely pays off. All right, Paul, do we have you back?
I think so. Do you have me back?
Yes. Yeah.
Hey.
Awesome. Sorry
There you
about that. Microphone just decided to take a break, I guess. So sorry about that, but no problem. And I think I mostly got most of the words out anyway. Basically, what Rex said is right.
There you go. We all should listen to Rex. All right. So yeah, we were talking about. Oh, go ahead.
Paul, I had a quick question for you.
Sure.
In your experience at Vego, do you go into shops, and do you do more open source to licensed tool implementations? Like, what's a typical environment that you go into normally at Vego?
So I've only been with Vego for a couple of months, and I'm on my first client with them there, but I can extend across all of the other clients that I've used and been with in previous companies. It's really like a 75% to 80% is some sort of open source. The client I'm working with now, open source is not a really good option for them, because they have some very hard requirements that either the open source tools don't handle, or they would have to have multiple open source tools to accomplish some of these things. And they want to go with something where they can have one full suite or one full
platform
tool suite. Yeah, to be able to do most, if not all, of their test automation. They've got a very hard requirement that I don't necessarily agree with, but they know their environment better than I do. And this one has to do mostly with the audience. So I ask questions, like we talked about. I ask the uncomfortable questions. I give them the pros and cons based on what they've told me, and I help them make decisions. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that have to deal with it after I leave. So if they're saying, hey, we have a non-starter with this type of situation, well, then they have to live with the good and the bad of that once I'm gone.
Yeah. Is it big client or small client?
This particular one's pretty big.
Company size.
Yeah, pretty big.
Okay. Rex, is your current client a small client or a big client?
Yeah, I would say medium. It's not very small. It's not super big. I would say more medium.
Yeah. So do y'all, is your approach and your client, is it open source approach, multiple tools, or do you have one single platform that you kind of lean on?
For automation, we have open source, and for mobile, well, yeah, mobile for both is open source. For automation, for UI, is Selenium with Java, and for mobile is Appian.
Yeah. Okay.
So both open source.
And are you just sort of trying to rig your results sort of together?
Yes, we just have it where it spit out results and it flows up to management. So it's open source, but for tracking the test cases and the agile teams, they use Gyro.
Oh, well, cool, man. So sorry, I know it was a little off topic, but
No, that's cool.
Go ahead, Lucio. I interrupted you, buddy.
No, you're good. You're good. This is what this is about. So now, in the interest of time, I want to go ahead and launch the last poll question that we have today, and arguably the most important topic for today. And I'm very excited to see what our attendees and you guys have to say about this. Do you think the average tester role will change due to AI in the next 12 months? And if so, how do you think it will?
Let's let Rex go first. I don't think he's gone first yet.
You know what? I think it will change in the next 12 months because there is excitement around AI. And with that excitement, people are going to want to see what the excitement is about. So I do see it changing in the next 12 months. And I recommend people to learn more about it. But I believe even though AI would change the role in the next 12 months, the foundation things are still important. Communicating with the stakeholders, learning how to do critical thinking, how to investigate failures, how to analyze requirements. So the core things of being a tester will always remain. So I do see AI having a big impact in the next 12 months because it's very exciting to see what it's about.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Rex there that, yeah, there's going to be some evolution, but the core of what testers are doing should be largely the same, which is critical thinking, big check mark there, evaluation, reporting, understanding of risk, understanding the things that were covered, the things that were not covered, but with some additional responsibilities of understanding, okay, great, we've taken some AI tool and now we're using it to help us with our testing. We have to understand the intricacies of that, maybe not its implementation per se, but certainly some amount of how the sausage is getting made so we can understand, well, did the sausage come out correctly, right? If we don't understand, if we put something in and got something out, was it appropriate to have gotten that thing out? Going back like to ChatGPT, we talked about code and things, and yet it generates useful code that works some of the time, can work, right? I needed a little TCP server for something the other day to test something out. I could have gone and spent, I don't know, an hour building that, or I could say, ChatGPT, write me a rudimentary C# based TCP server, and it did it, right? It did it, boom, it was out. It took me 5 minutes to do that, get it out, another 5 minutes to run it, make sure it was doing what I needed it to do, and I was done with it. I threw it away after that. I didn't need it anymore. Other cases, I've asked it to generate code that have syntax errors in it. But what it can't do yet, AI can't do yet, is understand context. It doesn't understand relative context and understand whether, okay, you use this word here and it doesn't really match the code that we have here. Is that a problem? Should that be flagged? So understanding context, again, with the critical thinking and the related pieces there, becomes possibly even more important than it is today, if I'm not overstating that.
Yeah. My opinion, I guess, is I guess I've always seen QA or quality management as kind of the pursuit of a perfect SDLC, right? And so I think AI will have tools that will help people, not just testers, but software engineers, get better in the pursuit of a perfect SDLC. So, it'll supercharge aspects of that, right? And as a tester, if you want to separate that discipline and just to a tester, they will still be focused on, how do I perfect the SDLC, right? And aspects of risk are obviously part of that. What we do, what we don't do, what we focus on, what we don't focus on. They'll have more time to be more strategic in their decisions, because the tools that are coming out will be able to help them with some of the legwork.
I want to add to this question. There is a very important question that came through a Q&A, and it reads, is software quality assurance in trouble with AI? And I think that is a very eloquent way to summarize that what we're trying to ask here too. Like, what is going to be the impact? Are testers in trouble?
Yeah, I would say no, right? Again, you will always need people out to make sure that SDLC that engine is tuned, right? and you'll need people to monitor that engine to make sure it's tuned right. The tools that I see are just helpful aids that help them become more productive. It's not getting rid of anybody's job. So, anyway,
yeah, I agree. I do not think a tester is in trouble because of AI.
So I would say that nobody's in any more or less trouble than they were when we got the new waves of automation, test automation coming out, right? There are going to be some companies that act rashly and say, oh, good, now we can replace this demographic of our employees with this tool. And that's going to work out well, or it's not. Disclaimer, or pro tip, probably not. There may be aspects of jobs that could be changed, replaced, or what have you. Yeah, people will be impacted, I think, but not a mass impact of, in the next 5 years, humans involved in quality and software testing are going to go away. No, I don't see that, because directly or indirectly, almost all software, if not all software, is consumed by who? People, humans. So it only makes responsible sense and even logical sense to have a human involved somewhere along the way, interacting with the tool, interacting with the product, to say, yeah, as a human, I don't hate this thing. I think we can sell it.
Excellent. All right. So with that, let me go ahead and share I'm going to end the poll here. And it says, it looks like we have a tie between, or close to a tie between yes and yes, but not drastically. And then there is a 70% of the population said no, it will not impact the tester's role. But amazing conversation. So let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A in the interest of time. We have about 10 minutes. So there is a question here, which I believe is very interesting. It says, what are the new skills? And I'm sure this is related to now the impact and the influence of AI in automation. It says, what are the new skills that you suggest test automation engineers should start looking into?
Math, statistics, heuristics, things like that, and understanding in general what these things are. Some of us that went through the classical route to get where we are, maybe we had those courses in college. Maybe we had them 35 years ago. We don't remember much of them anymore. And others of us may not have been exposed to those concepts at all. So absolutely, I think at least a rudimentary understanding of statistics and some math there is going to be essential if we are certainly if we are testing AI. If we're testing with AI, it's probably still interesting, but probably more from a pragmatic standpoint as opposed to the actual typing in of the numbers and the equations and such.
Rex, what do you think?
And then like Rex said, for those of us that may have not worked through getting some of those critical thinking skills and critical analysis and being able to express risks, boning up on that stuff as well will be essential.
Yeah, that's a good question, because when I think of, and I see the question, when I think of test automation engineer, my mind go to that person may already have a foundation of programming and automation. So it's tough to see what they should look into, but something that I see missing on a lot of projects from people I work with is the fundamentals of programming, especially the OOPS, object-oriented programming concepts. I see that missing a lot. So I would kind of go back to make sure they get a good foundation of programming before you continue with your automation skill sets, because that's missing a lot. And with that foundation of programming missing, some of the projects are not as effective as they can be. So I would say make sure you get a good foundation of programming. It's very important.
Excellent. Thank you. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, so testing AI as sort of as both Paul and Rex mentioned, there's a lot to that, right? So you definitely need programming skills to test AI code, right? So a lot of AI is being written in Python right now. So there you go. Testing with AI. I think the skill sets there are your traditional skill sets. You need to know your application. You need to know your system. You need to know your production systems, right? And you need to know what can break a system and what where those stress points are on that system. You need to know your vertical knowledge, right? So to be able to do that. And those are all, some of those aspects are not non-technical aspects, so I that's, if you are supercharged from a technical perspective through AI, then that, if using AI, it would seem like you would, the more functional aspects of it are the things that you would need to focus on, and then the strategy, basically.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So in the interest of time, I promised everyone that we were going to have a 45-minute conversation. We went a little longer, but I want to thank all of you, our panelists, Mike, Rex, and Paul. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for all your insights. And this has been a magnificent conversation. To our audience, thank you for all the questions and your participation as well. As I mentioned, this is going to be posted on our channel soon this week. And so if there is anything that you missed, you can go there and watch and get clarification on. Other than that, any last words before we go? Mike, Rex, or Paul?
No, I just wanted to thank you guys for joining.
Excellent.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here once again. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.